Good afternoon, everyone. I do hope you've had a chance to get some lunch, get refreshed, and come back for this afternoon session and raring to go. My name's Alan Davies. I'm Director of Digital Health at the Innovation Agency, which is the North West Coast AHSN, and it's my privilege and pleasure this afternoon to bring to you the heading of this particular session, which is bringing teletechnologies into the mainstream. I've got some colleagues that I'm going to invite on stage in a minute, and I think we should have, hopefully, a healthy debate this afternoon around a couple of interesting areas. So firstly, in a minute, I'm going to invite Hazel Harper, who's the Senior Innovation Lead, Healthy Aging and Digital Technologies at Innovate UK, to come along and talk to us about the challenge of the Industrial Strategy Grand Challenge on healthy aging, a really fascinating and exciting government-funded programme that I'm sure we'll all be very interested in. The second person I'm going to have and invite on stage is Anne Williams, who's the Commissioning and Contract Manager at Liverpool County Council. And Anne's very much involved in a really exciting 5G early project that Department of Culture, Media and Sports have funded. And she's got a lot of very interesting material to share on that and generally how digital technology is being implemented within Liverpool area. And then lastly, picking up on the theme just before lunch, I'm going to invite my colleague Hadley Stoller from NHS Digital to come back so that we can touch upon some of the themes we picked up on around the local health and care record exemplars and the National Record Locator Service. I will make a couple of notes as each of the presenters go through. I would encourage you also to just think through if there are any questions that you'd really like clarified or any areas you'd particularly like to explore, because we want to leave at the end of this sort of 10-15 minutes to have a roving mic going round, and we'll just target those at some of the presenters so that we can get some further clarifications. Hopefully that makes sense. Enough from me. I'm now going to move off and invite Hazel to come and join us from the side. She's got 15 minutes. She's going to take us through that Industrial Strategy Grand Challenge. Thank you very much. Hazel.
Hello, thank you, Alan. It's occupational hazard being tall. You always get the lights in your eyes. Okay, so this is who I am. I work for Innovate UK and I'm the lead on the ISCF Healthy Aging Challenge. So, no news to any of you, I would think. Quite a few stats that we're all familiar with. As we know, an ageing population puts an unprecedented demand on health and social care services. But it is a huge opportunity to create, design new products and services in healthcare, design financial products and services, and a whole range of other things to turn aging into a positive experience for all. It's a bit of an interesting stat there. 10 million people can expect to live to 100. So we've really got to change what we do and our approach to doing that. The market, as it currently stands, is fragmented and underdeveloped. There's a low level of understanding of products and services, and quite a degree of expectation that actually the NHS and social care will provide that. But what's really key to this challenge is the fact that good health helps us to remain independent, in work, and have meaning and purpose. So, here's the Healthy Aging Challenge. We are reporting into the Aging Society Grand Challenge, which is the overarching programme that the government has set around ageing. As you can see there's the mission statement that Theresa May made in May earlier this year, and this is what we're going to be delivering into. And just for added pressure, we are the first delivery output for this programme. So, what do we need to do? Well, living longer, it's a reason to celebrate. living longer with increasing dependency, not such a good opportunity, not such a good thing to look forward to. So what do we need to do? We need to prevent or delay dependency. So what do we know? We know that 70% of the wealth is held by the 50-plus generation. We know about Apple Watch. We know about the smartphone market. And we know that the fastest growing segment on social media is 65-plus. There is a reason for that. It's the dating game, but don't tell anyone, because that's not quite what's considered as an interesting stat for the 65-year-olds. However, aging is good business. If 70% of the UK wealth is in the pockets of the 50-plus, aging is good business. But we have the old consumer paradox. As soon as you label a product specifically for older people, they don't want it. Absolutely. Not for me, thank you. There's a great story about the Ford Focus car that was designed for older adults. The designer wore a third age suit that restricted his movements, arms, legs, neck, ability to turn properly. And what they did was they designed a fabulously universal car. In the end, they didn't market it at older adults, they just marketed it. And it is the best-selling car. It's got numerous design awards. So, aging products and services do not have to be dull. Lesson number 1. Oh, the baby boomers. What do we hear about them? Doom and gloom, isn't it? Baby boom, lots of gloom, taking all our resources, blocking up the NHS. Constantly in the press, we're getting this bad image of our older adults. It's very little positive to be said about this generation, which is a real shame because they have a huge contribution to society. We've got this negative language, we've got a blame culture. So, what do we need to do? We need to think about that. And indeed, some sectors are. Bet you recognise that. Helen Mirren, L'Oreal. Age is just a number. Can't quite do it how she does it, and I certainly haven't got silver hair. But nevertheless, she's advertising aging products. Bet you recognise this one. Yes, it's a coffee machine, but he's an older adult. That might be familiar if you've got social services people in the room. Ronnie Corbett, Wilshire Farm Foods, Meals on Wheels. He did a bit of advertising for them. And then we have Gloria Hunniford, who with Michael Parkinson advertised financial products and services for older adults. So some sectors are clicking onto this. Why are we not? Before we go into that, I'd like to share a personal story with you. One about expectations and assumptions. I was in the market for a new car. Went to the dealer, there was a brand new model out of my existing car. Thought, wow, okay, take it out for a test drive. Took it out for a test drive, got back, the dealer said, as they do, don't they? So how was that for you? And I said, it's like a comfy pair of slippers. Great. So, I suspect he was thinking of something like this. Nothing wrong with that, perfectly wearable. Whereas I was feeling like this, kind of like nonplussed. And what I really, really wanted was something like this. So, we are all consumers. We all have expectations. We all have desires, wants, and needs. And we can't say that we're all the same because we're not a homogeneous group. So what do we need to do? We absolutely need to reframe our approach. We need to develop new strategies and a new language. Let's move away from this negative imaging of older adults. We need to capitalize on opportunities. Shown you what the market is, that's just a snapshot of some of the market opportunities. And we can create economic value from the quality of life, from improving it and extending it. We need to think global. This ageing problem isn't confined to the UK, as you know. It is global. There's a race on. What's the possibility that China's halfway there already? When the UK has academia, technological, and other skills, a whole range of attributes that can crack this market. What do we need to do? We need to take risks and innovate. We need to do things differently. And perhaps we need to wear Louboutins every now and then. So the programme. The programme is based on 7 themes. These themes were developed by the Centre for Ageing Better. I'm not going to read through every single one of them, and the slide deck will be available if you would like to download it at a later time. But basically, what this is about is prevention. A bit more of the life course that we normally focus on. So instead of the high acuity end, a bit more of that bit in the middle. The ones with the pockets with the money in, the ones with the opportunity, the consumers that we don't probably consider our consumers. We need new products and services. We need new disruptive business models to support them. Everything needs to be of great design. Why do you want a grey box stuck on your ceiling? I'm not being offensive to anybody who might manufacture grey boxes, but why would you want that when you can choose something that's a bit more sexy and kind of fits with your lifestyle and connects to every other thing that you've got in your house and your pocket? So we need great design. It's key to consumer pull. But we also need things to be affordable. If I cast your mind back to the mission, reducing the gap between the richest and the poorest. So the consumer market offers us all opportunities. There's a whole range of values that people will place on things and a whole range of opportunities across a whole range of price points. But we do need to think about narrowing that gap. So the 7 themes: preventative, disruptive, design-led, and affordable. Lots of opportunity here to do things differently. So what does the programme look like? Well, there's 3 strands to the funding. Demonstrators, social behavioural research, and CR&D, which is our bread and butter. So I'm going to start at the bottom and work up. CR&D. Again, it's going to be based on the 7 themes. It's going to be at lower technology readiness levels. So this is, the early stuff, coming together with academia and industry. Where's the commercial pull? What is it that we should be producing? That type of activity. Now, this programme will have a close relationship with the demonstrators. So the demonstrators are going to be doing their thing, and CR&D are going to be doing their thing. But what's really important is whatever we're learning in both of those, we have a push-pull. I'm not doing that. What's it called, that thing? I'm not doing that. What did they call it? Can't remember, that's old age. So we're going to have a push-pull relationship. Social behavioural and design research. Now, this is going to be led by ESRC, which is the Economic and Social Research Council. The recipients of those grants are going to be based across the demonstrators, embedded in them, working with the demonstrators, bringing in all their expertise and knowledge so far, and developing new expertise and knowledge, working across them and in them. Quite unusual. So the demonstrators, well, they're going to attract most of the money. We've got there 3 to 6 demonstrators are proposed. Again, working on the 7 themes, but this is going to be at higher level of technology readiness. And the reason for that is because we don't have long. A 3-year program in this space is not long enough. For anybody who does this stuff, you know it's not. Typically 5 years is a good period, with 7 to 10 years with benefit realisation. So we're going to use the ready, almost ready to commercialise products and services. We're going to have a test bed, or the demonstrators are. They're going to have a test bed. And that's a group of older adults, and they're going to test these things on them. And we're going to see what happens. But we're going to use short cycle action research methodology. So that's where we have rapid iteration of implementation, learn, readjust, carry on, and then you get to a point where either it's going to scale, it's going to be adopted and scale, or you're going to sideline it for something else. So we're going to have real intuitive, iterative innovation happening on a test bed that we're learning about all the time. To do that, they're going to need a pipeline. They're going to need things to test. So demonstrators should have a pipeline of SMEs that bring new products and services to the test bed. They should also have influence in design. Marketing would be good. Some kind of route to a retail outlet. As you can see, this program is different than we've done before. This is about accelerating adoption and scale, understanding really what consumers want, what they might pay for something, and how actually do they go about buying it. So this is focused on commercial pull that produces products and services that are preventative. So we're a bit earlier along the life course, which is quite different to other programs that we've done. So, in terms of a demonstrator, what might it look like? So this is an example. As you can see, we've got many more partners there than traditionally pitches up for a grant. Normally I have an SME, academia, and maybe health and social care. That's good. But for this, we need dynamic, diverse partnerships. We want them to learn from each other. We want them to challenge each other. We really want this to be fast-paced action. So if you don't want a fast-paced roller coaster ride, don't bother applying, because this has to be dynamic. The cohort size can be thousands, but it has to be scalable nationally. So you have to think about that. It's got to be large enough to demonstrate impact. The impact that we need is social, fiscal, and economical. So those are the 3 types of impact we have to have. For people, families and communities, for the state in terms of releasing pressure on systems and growing and sustaining a market. And that market can move to global. We will be looking for people to develop ecosystems. A demonstrator could be classed as an ecosystem with different partners in a locality, be anchored in a locality, but not necessarily confined to a locality. So traditionally, programs are one, led by a lead partner, and stay within a reasonable confine. I'd like to stretch boundaries. I'd like to stretch learning. I'd like us to squeeze every single penny out of this 98 million. I want you to come understanding what we've done in previous programs. I want you to learn from that and implement it. We shan't be investing in things that we've done before. Yes, there's higher level technology levels, so we'll be looking for things that are maybe near to market, and some of those things may exist now, but need to get around the final hurdle to commercialization. So we're racy, we're going to be scale, and we're going to be rapid. The demonstrators need to be sustainable afterwards. So when grant funding runs out, we need to be continuing to do this because our aspirations as a population will not just stop on the even keel. We've all got desires, wants and needs, and we all like to have things that we consider desirable and affordable. So that market will only grow nationally and globally. So, to conclude, if you're thinking of applying for any aspects of this program, you must have 2 things. Ambition. This is an ambitious program. You need to be ambitious. You need to be hungry. You really need to want to do this. And the vision. The vision for a place where we can all age in the way that we would like to. Thank you.
Hi everybody, and as you can see, I'm from Liverpool. It is a Scouse accent, and that is a ferry across the Mersey, but I won't be singing. I've been invited to talk because I've been involved in a programme called Stop and Go, which is a European programme with TSA as one of the partners. And that's about bringing in some of these innovation. We heard this morning about we just need to do it. We've been the moments now to do things at scale. Well, we've done it in Liverpool at scale. And as a commissioner, I don't know how many commissioners are in the audience, but procurement is can be seen to stifle innovation. And this EU programme is not Horizon 2020, it's actually a PPI procurement programme, and it's about how do we get innovation into services at scale without blaming procurement. So this is what the Stop and Go programme was about. It was about using smartphone technology. That is a detail of it. But how we got there was that the Stop and Go programme allowed us to look at an innovative way of procuring. So we invited everybody who was in, we put a notice on the OJ PIN notice to say that we were looking for new technologies that would help with our domiciliary care services. The domiciliary care service providers who then interviewed. We did a speed dating with the support of KTN and Innovate Agency, and they then actually looked and provided us with 50 companies who had tech that might fit in the domiciliary care services area, and then the actual domiciliary care providers chose what technology that they thought would be best for their area. And that's a big step forward for commissioners in public sector. I didn't write a specification that said this must do whatever and must have 15 pink unicorns running it. There was none of that. It was just about, it wasn't even about what the outcomes was. It was that the businesses chose what they thought would be best to support their businesses to meet the outcomes that we'd set in the general care specifications. And the PASS system, as it says up there, was looking at, it's a smartphone. I'll just go over to this next slide and you can see it there. So there's a smartphone which the carers have. They go into somebody's home, there's a QR code. We have one paper record in case, and we have had 2 incidents in about 18 months where for whatever reason the system went down for more than 10 minutes. So we need a paper record in people's homes, but you can swipe a card, you swipe the QR code and it'll say, hi Anne, you're looking after, I'm going to pick on you Hazel, you're going to look after Hazel today. She needs to have, and then it'll have a little bit about what Hazel likes. So if I'm a carer that's never met Hazel before, I've got some details that are very instant and very easy to read, and then it can swipe through and it'll tell me what I need to do. And then if I swipe the card, it's like a Likert scale, I can say, yeah, I've done that, and that's all audited. It was a huge step forward. The domiciliary care services were pen and paper. There's lots and lots of records, paper records all over the city, and none of us ever looked at them. So actually, if somebody didn't turn up this morning to get somebody out of bed, we wouldn't know until a complaint went through. Now, we can set the perimeters as to when we want to know, but if we want to know within half an hour somebody's not turned up, then that care company, we've been able to buy 60-inch televisions, they've got them in the offices, they've got a huge dashboard on, and an alert will come up to say, you haven't been to see Hazel, she needs to get out of bed, this is urgent, and then the care companies can resolve the issue in real time. The families can have apps, and again, in real time, they can actually see what's happening to their loved one. So as I say, this isn't a test, a pilot, that's our new services. That's the way we delivered as domiciliary care services in Liverpool. One of the other technologies that we got through this process was what's called the Caring Cloud, or Safe Houses as it's now known as, and that introduced a LoRaWAN network. It's an Internet of Things. As a city, we didn't have a secure LoRaWAN network around, so we were able to purchase a LoRaWAN network. Actually, it's peanuts. It costs less than $25,000 to put the network all the way around the city. So every household now, they don't particularly know, but if they've got an Internet of Things, if they're part of our services, we can introduce Internet of Things into the home, and it'll be safe. It's a safe, secure, bespoke IoT network for us. And that has led that we can now provide, and I've walked around the exhibition hall, and there's quite a lot of Internet of Things technologies now, and what they're trying to do is, in our circumstances, we have 5 numbers that are given when it's a bit like a traditional telecare service. It's sensors, but they're IoT sensors, and I've got a slide in a minute which will just show you what they are. But they actually, what it will do is it will put through to the 5 first people. So in our ageing population in Liverpool, a lot of their children have emigrated to jobs particularly around London, or further afield. So actually they're not going to be around in the city. So if mum falls over, they might not want to be the person who gets the call, but the neighbour who they've lived next door to for the last 35 years and is a very good friend, they'll be the ones that can come round. So they've got like a circle of friends that they can call on, but the backstop is always our telecare services. So if there's nobody around who can actually do that, then it will go through to the telecare service. That then has led us on to the health and so because we had the LoRaWAN when the call came out for a health and social care testbed for 5G, we were obviously ideally set up because we had some experience within new technologies and new networks for health and social care. So what we've got here is the question that we're trying to answer within our health and social care testbed, and that's to see that if the 5G connectivity can be sufficiently cheap and effective in health and social care provision, then it will be cost effective to give free access to those unable to afford either phone or broadband access. We're very aware of a digital divide, and we didn't want to widen it. Actually, the telecare, the providers of the new technologies, a lot of it is going on to broadband. The digital cost of going from analogue to digital, if we changed all our existing Tunstall equipment to digital, it would cost me an extra £234,000. I don't have an extra £234,000 just for the SIM cards. So we've got to look for something else. And this is what we're looking at now is very exciting, and it is actually a huge disruptor to everything, I'm afraid, existing telecare services as well. So what we're looking at is a network of network. The blue wireless mesh network sits on dark fibre. So we have a dark fibre network around that we draw up, and that provides the backhaul. We've got, I'm going up from the bottom, so then we can see the main partners at the bottom are Liverpool City Council, Amazon Web Services are there providing support for us. We've got University of Liverpool, their green 5G demonstrator. The 5G, as I say, is about a mesh network, and actually, so it's not the mobile phone operators, not just going to put a new, bigger, shinier, more powerful mast up for 5G. That's not the way it works. But actually, if what we're putting is mesh nodes on lampposts, and we're having a line of sight network, then actually we've got far less usage per node, obviously, than a huge mast. But it means that we haven't got, if you cover, we're going to need 66,000 just to cover the Liverpool city area. We're part of a city region, and the city region is going to probably need about 500,000. And actually, when you look at that, then the usage is actually quite high. So what we've got to look at is trying to get green ways into it. So we're working with Liverpool University on that. John Moores University are providing us with the optimization, so we make sure that if a kid knocks a node off with a football, or a lorry knocks down the lamppost, then it will kick in less than a nanosecond to make sure that the mesh is complete. We've got AIMS who are helping us and they've got the relevant NHS credentials to provide some sort of research with all the data that we're potentially collecting. The Liverpool City, the verticals, they're the use cases that we're looking at. So what we're doing is we've got an adult social care. We've got one thing which is called a pharmacy assistant, which stands about the size of a small Coke bottle. It's got a SIM card in it, but it's also got a 4K video. And so we can use that to watch somebody take their medication. So it just doesn't prompt them, it actually physically watches to see if you've taken it. And it's linked in directly, and we're working with the pharmacies. It's going to link into the pharmacists, because the high street pharmacy is really struggling, and this would be a way of keeping them on the high street, which would be great for our communities, because we want to make sure that we keep the community's spirit there as well. So actually, they can monitor it, and they'll keep the EMAR, so they'll keep an electronic medication adherence record, which will go into all of the records that we've heard about today. So actually, when you rock up at the doctor, and the doctor says, what tablets have you been taking, they can see what you have and haven't taken, and how many times. And again, we're starting to work with the ambulance services, because if you turn up, or if you go to your GP, or you go into an A&E, they say, what medications are you on? And as a daughter of somebody who went through that stage, I would give out my mum's list of these are all the medications she's taken, and then she'd start, didn't take the water tablets because I wanted to go to town and there isn't a toilet on the way. I haven't taken my statin because I'm sure this pain in my arm is because of those statins. And then she'll go through all the tablets that she's not taken or she hadn't taken. And actually, what this will do is actually give us an actual, this is the medication that they've taken. And it will save considerably on the medication prompt calls that we have to pay, where currently we have carers going into. The Safe House and the IoT sensors, as I say, we've already got 16,000 houses who have got the IoT, and what we want to do is to try and make sure that it's the ambience of the where elderly people are. So if they do fall, it's picked up and they don't have to be going around with something on their neck or some call button that they've got to press, that actually that will be picked up. And we're looking to change social care business models. So we're working very closely with the domiciliary care providers. We're also looking at hydration sensors. People call it my toilet blocks. I'm not looking to build blocks of toilets around the city, but what I want is almost like a Harpic block that goes in a toilet, and it can actually tell whether you're hydrated or not. It's not a medical device. It's not going to tell you whether you've got an infection, but it'll be able to tell you whether you've got you're hydrated enough. And then what we want to do, that will then link back to the domiciliary care provider, and the domiciliary care provider, when they look on their app, it will say Hazel hasn't drunk anything today, and you need to spend an extra 10 minutes with her to make sure she does drink something. So we want to link it all in together. We're also looking at, we've got some new digital ways of drawing where the mesh nodes should go. But for the health and social care side of things, we're looking at loneliness solutions, and we're looking at pub quizzes. So groups of elder people who used to go out socially, they can now keep in touch through the new technologies, and they will be doing every Friday evening, there could be a pub quiz, and it's a way of keeping in contact with people in a different way than they want to, currently can. We've also got what we call push to talk. Those of you who do actual product design, it's been designed, co-produced with elderly people. It's not aerodynamic, it's not pretty, and when I saw it I was like, oh no, but that's what people want, so it's not for me, this is what people want. It basically looks like a burger box with a big button on the top, but you push it and then within 5 minutes your phone will ring, and it'll be somebody else who's within your. We're going to segment who it is, so we're going to have a dedicated service just for people with learning disabilities, a dedicated service for people with mental health services. We can segment that even more to young mums who maybe got postnatal issues. So we can have, if we want to, we can have volunteers to make sure that there is always somebody there who can speak. We can put in health visitors. There's a whole range of options we've got around the push to talk. And then that rings to somebody else who's in that situation within 5 minutes. The University of Liverpool have also got a chromatic camera. I don't know if anybody have ever seen this. I think it's a bit creepy, but it really works. You've all got auras. So if we had the chromatic camera now, I could tell who's fallen asleep because I've bored you, or who's actually just had some sort of seizure or whatever. And you've all got slightly different colours going around your head. And it is creepy, that bit, but we've all got different auras. But it doesn't take a picture of you. It's just your heat map. So it can actually tell whether you've fallen, as I say, whether you've had a seizure, whether you've had a stroke. It can actually give those sort of details. And it can also then feed into going back to the records that we've heard from Hadley before as to why people are being called out to the house. We're also we're working with the Royal, and we're looking at the new systems of there, and I think it's already been mentioned about the discharge from the ward, so going through A&E, instead of going on to medical receiving ward and being monitored, you'll be monitored in your home, but you'll be monitored by the consultant who would have been responsible for you in the hospital. And we're looking at a whole range of things that we can do in the community. Because what we will have, and then we've also got Sensor City, which is the leader of our consortium. So the 5G, very quickly, what we've tried to do, there aren't any international standards yet for 5G, but there are 3 main principles that you've got to have. You've got to have enhanced mobile broadband connectivity, so you've got to have very fast broadband. And 1 gigahertz is going to be old hat. We're up to about 3. We can get 3 in the road going into people's houses. And as well as the high bandwidth, we're also talking about low latency. In my house, it's called the pizza of death, where you get that pizza that goes around and it's buffering. So you're watching a film and it goes, well, we can't have that. If we've got health and social care actually delivering care into people's houses, we can't have that pizza of death. We've got to have constant flow. So there's low latency. And just quickly, because I'm running out of time, I know, the open platform is very important so that other people can come and join us. If anybody has got any technology that they would like to try in a health and social care setting, if they email me, and we are looking probably in January to look to get some new technologies into what we're doing, so we're open. We need to, ideally we'd like some VR, we'd also like maybe augmented reality as well. But we can actually use the network slicing. So we're actually using a very high bandwidth, which is currently Ofcom don't license. And it's traditionally been very unstable, but this new technology, which is British, actually stabilises it. And it's very exciting for UK PLC, because what we're pressing for is for the government to give that bandwidth free to health and social care. Because actually, the data, we've heard lots and lots of things about data, but nobody's mentioned the cost of that data. And actually, the cost of data on the scale that we're talking about starts to get high. So if you're transferring MRI scans from a hospital into a GP surgery, which can happen now, that's one cost that the NHS will pay for. But we'll look at NHS pay for a mobile MRI scan that a district nurse can do, and then feed that back into the consultant, because that's really where we want to get to. And the 5G will provide that network that can deliver that, but what we want to be able to do is to be able to afford it and to make sure that those data costs are kept down. So we're putting a strong plea to the government to say that you've given military their own bandwidth, and other security services have got their own bandwidth. Actually, it makes sense to give NHS and social care their own bandwidth.
That was really interesting, and could go on, because there's so much more that we could unpack on that particular subject. I'm very conscious of time. I'm going to invite Hadley Stoller to join us. Hadley presented earlier on the National Record Locator System and also on LACRA. Conscious of time, Hadley, so I think what we'll do is, if you join the ladies on the couch, we'll move to questions, and hopefully we can pick up on what we heard earlier. So I think we've got a roving mic. Has anybody got any questions that they'd like to ask Anne or Hadley from earlier, or Hazel from that piece that we did at the beginning? Anybody? Hands, please. No, we've got one over there, Steve.
Thank you. Steve Sadler from TSA. That was loud. Quick clarification from Hazel, please. Just something on, can you say more around the timing on the funding calls for the industrial strategy? I didn't quite get what was on screen.
Did you hear that, Hazel? So timing?
Vaguely, yes. We're hoping to be out towards the end of the year. I've talked about ambition and vision, and to reflect that through the programme and the process for ISCF, which is fast-paced, intense, and brutal, to say the least. It's taken its time. So we are sincerely hoping to be out at the end of the year.
Thanks, Steve. I've got one to actually poke across to Anne, who's just finished a little bit. So Anne, as a commissioner in Liverpool, can you give a little bit of a sense of the sort of culture? How do you champion the kind of mainstreaming of tele-technologies that you touched upon in Stop and Go and Pass and all the others? Do you want to say a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, what we found is that most of the care companies are managed by or owned by people who are probably in their 50s, who've all got the latest iPhone or whatever because they can afford it in their bag. They don't really know how to use it. They'll use the family WhatsApp circle and they'll be able to book an EasyJet flight and they can do their shopping online. But that's it. And what we found is actually quite a lot of the staff, and I'm not being ageist here, but quite a lot of the younger staff are more interested. So when we rolled out this, we had a series of training sessions for the carers, and most carers are not in the higher performance you know, echelons. So there's some people have got very low levels of literacy, etc. And we were putting on we put on 2 sessions, and like half the people in each session didn't turn up. So we changed it, and we said we're going to explain how your new app works. We had 100% attendance. So it's making sure that the language is understood. So if you say it's training, nobody wants to know. But if they're telling you, well, we're going to tell you how your app works, then they were there. So what we found is that we're working with the companies, and this money was European money, and the forms that we had to fill in and the evaluations we had to do, it was fairly standard European. And we had the evaluation forms, and one company, the manager said to me, he wasn't keen to give out you know, he didn't think he'd get many back, and he said, will I lose the money because we can't get many of these evaluations back? So I said, well, try and see as many as you can get. And he was very negative. Anyway, his staff absolutely loved it, and in fact he had a delegation from his staff to say, if you don't fill in the forms correctly and you lose this, we're not working for you, we'll go to a company that has it. And he really said that was the first time he actually bothered to look to see how different it made his staff's life. And it makes it so much easier for them. It's got a very good voice recognition. It does a really good Romanian Scouse accent. So you can just talk into it, and you don't have to write. And that's made a big difference as well.
Thank you, Alan. That's helpful. Question in the front, Beverly.
Hi, it's Beverly Bryant from System C. Question for Hazel. So on the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund, there's been quite a number of us very excited and ambitious about taking part in it. But that's been going on for almost a year now, and the idea of fast-paced, intense and brutal has not actually been the mood that's been coming from the government on this. And so it's quite hard to stay ambitious and excited when the goalposts feel like they're changing a little bit and we aren't sure exactly what the criteria are. The challenge and the question, really, not so much for you, Hazel, but I would appreciate if you would take it back, is that the only way we are going to be able to compete globally with the likes of China is if the government actually reaches out into industry and starts to consider us as partners working together against the global competition, rather than positioning the government as the judge and the industry as the people who have to meet loads of criteria, mobilise, spend money, cost to compete. There'll then be winners and losers. The losers won't get any money, but they've spent money, and which actually puts them back, and they can't then compete with China. So it's just this stance that we tend to take of government versus industry on these competitions, rather than government and industry competing with the rest of the world. I really just want to make that plea. Thank you.
Thank you, Beverly. Hazel, do you want to say something back on that?
Yeah, if you don't mind, thank you. Thank you for that point. Throughout this process, actually, we've undertaken a huge amount of consultation right across, including with industry and sectors within a broad spectrum. And that's because, as I've said, diversity is key. We've all got a lot to give, and we've all got a lot to learn, and we should, if I'm being rude about it, get over ourselves and get in the sandpit and make this happen. So I take your point. I am hoping that the way that we position this competition, that it actually allows a lot of participants and entrants, so that what you have invested in it, in terms of money, blood, sweat and tears, is fruitful for everybody. I do take your point. It is fed back to the organisation regularly, and this is what it's about. This is an industrial strategy challenge about UK PLC, and so industry is at the forefront of this. But thank you for your comment.
Can I also just
feed it again.
I'll just bring Anne in as well, because Anne, I know you're very keen on getting involved in this as well. Just from a council point of view, what's your thoughts, back to Beverly's points, in terms of partnering with industries and how you would see that going forwards?
Well, as a council, we get the offer of these sort of, each government department, it seems to be the new way to do it, is that they put in big lumps of money and it's almost winner takes all. And as a city, we've benefited very much through the old Dallas programme, which was not dissimilar in some ways to this. We're part of the testbed and trial now. We're sitting in Birmingham. They've just won £100 million from DCMS for their 5G rollout. But it's a huge amount of money, and I take the point about, industry, and we work very closely with SMEs. Most of those companies that were on my slides are SMEs, and it's a big lot of their time. I'm paid to be in the room. It might be a waste of my time, but I'm still getting paid. But some of these guys, if they're not successful, they've not only wasted their time, they've got no money, and I think. Personally, I think that it would be nicer if there were smaller seeds, because I think you mentioned earlier, one of your projects that your competitions you ran, that activated a lot of other people to do it, and they're carrying on even if they were unsuccessful. That's certainly what's happening with the 5G and the connected communities, which was 100 million for a city. Most of the cities are now trying to have realised the benefits that 5G will bring, and they're all wanting to roll out their network. Yeah.
I think the key thing, and Beverly raises a very interesting point, and when I was the other side of the table in industry, when I was involved in the NHS test beds, and one of the frustrating parts of that was it was good as a sandpit for testing stuff, but when industry gets involved, it wants a return on investment, it has to. And we're not always very good necessarily at describing where that process goes and what it looks like in concrete terms. So I think there's a real opportunity, Hazel, there for us to go back, if you like, and try and chart out that path to sustainability, not just in terms of the public sector, but also in terms of industry's partnership within that. So thank you, Beverly, for that point. Sadly, we are just about out of time. Damn. But before I go, I'm going to ask Hadley one quick question, because he has actually, he is on stage. We did touch upon the LACRAs and the NRLS earlier. I just wonder very, very quickly, for those in the audience that are interested in that and are saying, okay, so what? What could you say about the APIs and standards that are around that in terms of tele-technologies connecting in? And maybe just a sense of timeframes as well. Again, just remind us again of those timeframes, Hadley, if you wouldn't mind.
So for those of you that heard the talk earlier, we're hoping to go live with the record locator service next month. And as I said earlier, that's the first phase. The second phase has commenced now in the sense that we're out for discovery. We're open to conversations around what that next phase will look like. But we hope that will also be going live with the retrieval aspect of records from next summer. So in other words, presence of records that exist nationally from next month, and then the retrieval aspect from next summer. And I think part of the conversation that I was keen to have today with colleagues, through these kind of interactions, and hopefully we can talk offline, is around what do we think the telehealth sector, telecare sector, could offer the record locator, i.e. what kind of records do we think there are out there that would be of use? And it was interesting, I was talking earlier to someone from social care who said, actually, I've got a whole load of stuff, but you probably wouldn't want it all. So actually, in terms of the API and the standards, I think, we have the mechanisms at NHS Digital to develop those and co-design, create them with the service. But the point before that is about saying, what are we actually designing them for? What record types do we want? What useful information do you guys have that you think would be good to share that other people would benefit from? And once we understand the answer to that question, then we can work out how we then weave it into those central national capabilities.
Thank you, Hadley. And that does bring us just about to the end. So what I was going to say is we already have in the LACRA and in the NRLS area use cases, critical clinical use cases for why they need to exist. I would throw it back as we close the session just now to you in the audience to get back in touch with us, to get back in Hadley with new use cases, expanded use cases, coming from the social care perspective, using telecare data, using wearables. What else could we provide and enhance the capability of those technologies that we've just talked about earlier, because we don't know it all, and there is an open need for that information to be provided back. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Appreciate we're a couple of minutes over. Thanks for bearing with us. Thank you.